Money Heist Part 4 is entirely in Spanish once again, and it leads on from Part 3. Now, if that sounds obvious to you, then you probably won't enjoy this series, because nothing in this series is any more complicated than the fact that 4 follows 3. This series is made by stupid people, for stupid people, and the people who vehemently defend it in the comments are going to be those stupid people. Now, about Part 1, which I really did enjoy despite some extremely annoying characters, I said there were some things that didn't make sense, that wouldn't really be possible. You can't actually rob the Spanish mint. I'm quite sure that you would fail no matter how good your plan is, especially if you were to take a brain-dead window licker like Tokyo in with you. That woman would screw up a glass of cordial, never mind a complex heist. But I said that it wasn't a huge deal for Part 1 because it was so exciting and well written and well made. Part 2 lost all that. The cracks in the plot really started opening up and the whole thing rounded off way too neatly, almost as if there should have been a whole extra episode, even though they spent a good half of the series filming in super slow-mo to drag 1 minute's filming out to 4 minutes of runtime. Part 3 didn't do a lot better. But, oh my goodness, Part 4 dropped all semblance of realism, and at the same time lost all the fun that made the original lack of reality bearable. Very little of this series was fun to watch, so every time they ask you to suspend your disbelief, you're very conscious that you're not getting anything in return for that. This is always the trade-off with suspension of disbelief. There are lots of excellent movies which will have you enjoying all sorts of craziness that couldn't actually happen because in return for your faith, you are shown something incredible. In Money Heist Part 4, you are asked to forget everything you've ever learnt about how anything works in exchange for what? If gunshot wounds were actually as harmless as this series makes them out to be, police wouldn't even use guns because I've got modified Nerf guns that do more damage than the firearms in this series. Speaking of damage, Tokyo is back, of course. Arguably the worst main character ever. She has no redeeming features, and yes, I am including her looks. She's not hot, she looks like an 11-year-old boy who had to repeat 4th grade several times before one day deciding to cut his own hair. If you are watching this whole series to ogle women, then I would suggest that there are series made entirely for that. And the writing in those series is better. While we're on that, the writing in this series is even more lackluster than parts 2 and 3. There are so many motivations here that don't really make sense. There's a lot of characters making decisions and then the writer will whisper in their ear that that's not what they want for the series anymore. And you'll see the character sort of just change their mind. There's this whole thing with Palermo basically trying to sabotage the plan, which, has gone so well so far. I mean, there's no way that a tactical team of police could find some cracks to, get a foothold in this plan. Everything's gone so swimmingly. But anyway, Palermo tries to make it go even more wrong, and then he's like, actually no, I like this plan. How convenient that I just let the only feasible plot point emerge, and now we've all got to deal with that for the rest of the series. It's like these writers think that things happening is what we want, whether those things make any sense or not. There's even a flashback to something from the first episode of Part 3, and I remember thinking that thing was stupid at the time, but when the flashback occurs, I thought, yeah, wait, that makes even less sense than it did originally. Lately I've been watching a lot of critics who can do this much better than I can, and to paraphrase Chris Stuckman a bit, who was talking about an entirely different series by the way, but with every part of Money Heist, they took the wrong lesson from the parts before it. Part 1 had a lot of elements. It wasn't overloaded, but there was a lot of characters, a lot of plans, a lot of action, a lot of style choices, and as a series, it was good. But Part 2 took that and honed in on the wrong parts of that. Now I know that people are going to try and prove me wrong by pointing out that Parts 1 and 2 were made together. Okay. But that doesn't mean there can't be a significant difference in quality. The Matrix 2 and 3 were made together. The Lord of the Rings films were made together. Sometimes one episode of a TV series can be significantly better or worse than the rest of the series. Things being made together doesn't mean that one part is not much better or worse. It can be written by different people, it can be shot in a hurry, all sorts of things can go right or wrong and make those things different. If you're saying that because they're made together, they can't be different, you're dumb. Part 2 focused almost entirely on style. It felt like one of those demos for 4K TVs where everything is just super detailed, super high contrast, 100% saturation, shot at 120 frames a second, with no coherence to the script whatsoever, and that made it boring. Part 3 improved a little bit, except that it focused too much on characters, and there were too many characters, and most of them weren't even very good, so very little of Part 3 was spent with characters whom we'd actually like to be around. Part 4, this series, took the characters and the action and the style and tripled down on all of it. Now, the word plan is used a lot in this series. They're always talking about this is part of the plan, this is part of our way to get out. But I can't imagine any viewer still being very attached to this plan. We don't even really know what it is. It's so vague. They keep mentioning this plan as if it's so important and the whole series is about it. But I'm just there thinking, you guys can't even manage not to get shot by the police or each other when you're in the place with hostages. There is no way you've got a plan to get out of this unless it's a spaceship. Basically, we lose faith that the writers can pull this off because we've been in this one place for so long now and nothing has ever gone right, and all the while there's stuff happening that's supposed to be the actual robbery, but we're only ever shown this like twice in the whole series. It just becomes a complete mess. You can't really follow it, you don't really care to follow it. There are a few things that might have actually been interesting if they hadn't have been so crowded by this over-the-top garbage. Now, I mentioned before that on one of Palermo's whims, a plot point emerges, and it's some of the only clarity of direction that we get for the entire series. But the way they chose to do it was weird. It happens maybe 3 or 4 episodes in, and it seems to want to establish itself as the main plot point for this entire part of the series. So my question is then, why did it take so long to happen? Additionally, this gives rise to some of the least realistic things you'll see in the entirety of Money Heist, and that is a big statement. For starters, there's a character who should have a visible hand injury, and he holds his hands up like this, and lo and behold, nothing. It's the sort of thing that you'd forgive Sergio Leone in his first 2 shoestring budget films. But 55 years and several $1 million later, if you show me an injured hand, I want it to look injured. The gunfire thing I've already mentioned. The guns in this series are loaded with blanks when the writers want them to be, and live rounds at other times. And then a bit later we get Tokyo at probably the most annoying she's ever been, which again is a very strong statement. She's making all kinds of huge threats against a guy who is portrayed as like a special forces op. And it's just showing more of the problem that this show has all the time, which is that nothing is grounded in any reality, but it's still set in the real world. You might as well watch The Incredibles. It's much more entertaining than this, and it's just as realistic. Not that it really surprised me, but the end of Part 4 is not the end of the entire series. I mentioned that in my review of Part 3. I said it's Netflix, so they're probably going to draw this out for as many seasons as they can possibly get, and that is indeed what they're doing. But unfortunately, in reality, this series really is finished. It went from being a pretty exciting kind of thriller, action-y thing in Part 1 to really repeating the same ideas in Parts 2 and 3. Part 4 felt like a full-on admission that they don't actually have anything left in the tank. I'd be amazed if whatever awaits us in Part 5 isn't even worse again, because they've really written themselves into a hole now. They've given themselves very little material to work with, and I can't really say that I feel bad for them. When Netflix took over this, they, as they are wont to do, got greedy, and everything became about making this more appealing to people with short attention spans while making more episodes, so making full of slow-mo and just repetitive close-ups and stupid stuff that it didn't need. And it probably worked. This show is now appealing to the sorts of people who can't tell quality from flashiness. Now, if you know that this show is dumb and you would just watch it with friends over some beers to kind of laugh at it and have a good time, then I can totally see that. My problem is that that's not what the writers meant for this show. They want you to take it seriously. This show takes itself seriously, but it's so cheap and stupid and just that I can't see any discerning viewer doing the same thing. So overall, I would steer clear of it. Steer clear is 3 out of 10 for me, with 6 out of 10 being my lowest positive rating. So it's definitely one to avoid. So if you hated me for this review, then by all means have a yell at me in the comments and then be gone with you. But if you even mildly agreed with me and you like foreign language series and films, then hang around, check out some other videos, subscribe and all that YouTubey type stuff, because foreign language series and film is what this channel is all about. So check out some other videos and all that. If you're learning Spanish or any other language, then go over to my other channel, Days of French and Swedish, where I discuss the ins and outs of language learning. So yeah, stay safe and stay home. I cannot believe that's become an acceptable thing to say, and I'll see you with another one soon. Bye bye.